When it comes to building a great palate for drinking bourbon, this is where you need to start. Here's 5 flavor profiles every bourbon drinker needs to know. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Hutch, and thanks so much for joining me on this journey through the world of whiskey. So this video, and I think it might actually develop into a series because there's a lot of ground to cover here, but this video in particular is the fruit of a couple of different comments that have come through on the channel across time. Mostly from people who are just starting out in bourbon or just starting their whiskey journey, looking to understand what we mean when we say different distilleries have different sort of core flavor profiles. So I figured we'd take 5 major distilleries and sort of their core flavor profile and break that down, hopefully giving everybody a great lay of the land in terms of what products are out there. But also I think this is an absolutely essential way to build out your palate, and tasting through these different sort of flagship expressions is a great way to orient yourself in the world of whiskey and build up your understanding of different flavor notes, literally just by tasting through these and coming to know what these flavor profiles taste like to you in particular, because again, palates do vary, so you got to keep that in mind as we go through this. So without further ado, let's dive into these flavor profiles. We're going to start with pretty much the biggest distillery out there, especially when you consider international presence. They're just massive, and that's Jack Daniel's. So we've got the Jack Daniel's Bonded. If you ask me, this is the best sort of core expression of what they do best. I know that the old number 7 and things like that have been around forever, and this was only released last year in 2022, but this is just really good whiskey for around $30 and gives you a great sense of what Jack Daniel's does when they're firing on all cylinders. So here, for each of these bottles, I'm going to break down 5 flavor notes so that we're consistent across the board with that, and you can compare those sets together. With Jack Daniel's Bonded, here's what I get. And if you see me looking down, that's because I actually have my notes pulled up for this. I want to make sure I'm on track for you guys. But on this one, I've got banana. Banana is something that I always get on Jack Daniel's. It's actually what I get a lot on Brown-Forman products, which is their parent company. We'll get into that in another video. But banana's here. We've got caramel, maple syrup, baking spices, and oak. So those are the 5 flavor notes I'd say are core to this expression. Let me know if you've tasted this product or Jack Daniel's, and if you've gotten that banana. I think that banana maple syrup combo is really core to this flavor profile for me. So overall, 2 words to describe Jack Daniel's Bonded, which I think is a good indication of Jack Daniel's overall. I think rich and sweet. All right, let's move on to bottle number 2, which is from another massive distillery with a wide array of products, but I think this is where you should start if you're trying to get to know their flavor profile, and that's going to be Heaven Hill, and none other than Elijah Craig. So I've got the barrel proof because that's what I have on hand, but I would of course recommend checking out the small batch, and that's what I'll be talking about here, Elijah Craig small batch. So sorry that I don't have that on hand, but I have had a bottle before and tasted through it, so I'm gonna give you the notes I get on it most often. So the 5 notes I get on Elijah Craig small batch from Heaven Hill are vanilla, so more of a vanilla presence on this, caramel, so staying steady there, a toasty kind of oak presence here, maybe even veering a little bit toward the marshmallow end of spectrum, but a toasty oak. Then I always get nut, but not necessarily peanut, maybe more like a nutmeg. And then I get a little bit of cinnamon spice, so that particularly comes through on the finish for me. So again, that vanilla caramel core, but this toasty oak I think is really what sets Elijah Craig apart for me. So if you're able to, check out Elijah Craig small batch to expand your understanding of Heaven Hill, and let me know if you get those notes, especially that sort of toasty oak at the center. And overall, if I had to describe that Elijah Craig profile, which I think goes a lot with the Heaven Hill profile, I would say sort of rich and toasty. All right, moving nicely along, let's move to bottle number 3, which again, major player in the bourbon game, and that is Jim Beam Distillery. If you're gonna get to know their profile, I think this is where you wanna start, and that is Knob Creek 9. So technically, Knob Creek is its own sort of smaller distillery under the larger umbrella of Jim Beam, but I think the elements here really evoke a lot of other Jim Beam products. But just for your bang for your buck, for $30, this is where I would direct most people. So what are the 5 flavor notes I get most often on Knob Creek 9? Well, I get a lighter kind of caramel, so light caramel. I get oak. I get peanut, so a specific nut there, the peanut presence for sure. I get spice, so baking spices, and I get leather. A little bit of an aged presence here with that oak and leather, and then that peanut I think is really core to a lot of Jim Beam products as well, and caramel is something you're gonna get quite a bit on Jim Beam. Overall, if I had to describe this Knob Creek 9, I would say that it's sort of like a candy bar profile, which I think Jim Beam evokes a lot, and they'll often have some chocolate in their profile as well. All right, let's move on to bottle number 4, which is from the most sought after distillery in the world, Buffalo Trace. If you're gonna get to know their flavor profile, you're gonna probably wanna start with Buffalo Trace bourbon. So the benefit of this too is that it's 25 bucks and more widely available than most other products from Buffalo Trace. In terms of the 5 flavor notes that I get most often here, I get brown sugar, I get vanilla, then I get cherry and grape. So there's a fruity core to this. Lots of people see a lot of cherry on Buffalo Trace. Lots of people see it more as a grape. I see it as kind of both are there, so I put both as one flavor note there. Then we get honey on this as well, and then oak. So I think Buffalo Trace bourbon in general is right around 8 years old. So I get some nice aged oak notes, but overall it's got that lighter, fruitier presence to it with just enough backbone from some of that age presence. So let me know if you've tried Buffalo Trace or anything from them. Do you get that sort of quintessential cherry grape note that stands out for lots of people on this flavor profile? And then overall, if I had to describe Buffalo Trace, I'd say something like sweet and fruity. So if you're able to taste it, definitely try to keep track of those fruit notes that you're getting and let me know if those come through in the comments below. All right, last but not least, we've got a distillery that you just can't pass up when you're starting to expand your palate and dive into the world of whiskey, and that's gonna be Wild Turkey. For me, you gotta start with Wild Turkey 101. So Wild Turkey 101 is a staple of many, many people's shelves. It's obviously 101 proof, so got good heft here, and just sort of evokes the entire essence of the Wild Turkey distillery. So the 5 flavor notes that I get most often on this product are vanilla and caramel. So starting off with those 2 as a core and a base. There's a nuttiness here. So it's not exactly peanut. Sometimes it's more like hazelnut or nutmeg that I get on it, but there's a nutty quality. Then there's rye spice. So I really think you'll get some rye kick here. And then last but not least, the most distinctive is kind of a funky oak presence. So you'll hear a lot of people talk about the Wild Turkey funk. And I think once you taste Wild Turkey 101, you'll really start to understand how that combo of spice and wood and some sweeter notes really comes together for this interesting sort of funky profile. And I think that oakiness here, the woody oakiness that's at the center, is something that is great to have a account of in your mind as you taste through all types of bourbons. All right, everybody, so that's a good start. That's a start for this series and for breaking down different flavor profiles from different distilleries. It's also just a great start if you're getting into bourbon. If you tasted through these different products, I think you'd have a huge leg up on lots of people in terms of understanding the variety and different flavor profiles that are out there from different major distilleries. Let me know in the comments below if you agree with my breakdown of these different bottles and if you'd like to add different notes that you get or find core to each of these distilleries and these main products. Want to hear that from you guys as well. Hopefully this has been helpful. Gonna try to continue it with more distilleries like Maker's Mark and Four Roses and Old Forester. There's plenty more out there to do a breakdown of, but my biggest hope is just that, especially if you're starting out in your whiskey journey, this has been helpful to sort of break down different bottles from different distilleries, their main core essence, I guess, of their flavor profile, so you understand what they're offering to you. And even if you've been doing this a long time and drinking whiskey for many years, hopefully returning to basics is always a fun exercise. Until I see you guys again for another video, all I can say is keep drinking good whiskey, keep trying new things and expanding your palates, and cheers.